Hello and welcome to week 2 kind of recap and lecture of the family wellness course. It's been a fantastic first couple weeks. The feedback I've been hearing is really amazing. People are finding simple ways to create change and promote health in their families without, pulling hair and feeling like they're going crazy. So far so good. If you have questions, let me know. I'm here. Questions, comments, concerns. That's my tagline. I'll hook you up. So today we're going to be talking about carbs, right? We're going to go over what we had in the course from last week. Just do an overview. And then I'm going to add some details for you and talk about some common things that come up with my clients and my experience when it comes to carbohydrate digestion, and we'll talk a little bit about bacteria, not a ton because we're going to save that. We're actually going to have a whole course/lecture week on the microbiome, which is the bugs that live in and on us, and I'm just going to give you guys that course series that I typically sell as a class structure like this one, just for being part of this program. I want you to have as many resources as you can. So that's a fun little course to go through. It's much shorter than this, but I do a lot of videos with the kids and it's pretty fun. So, and then we're going to talk about picky eating, right? There's a lot of good conversation on picky eating, and what we can do as the adults in the situation, and then how to designate that division of responsibility. So we'll talk about some people's wins and complete fails in that department, and then my own experience a little bit as well, just so you feel like I know you think I'm superwoman sometimes, but I am in fact very human. So then we're going to talk about hydration. Oh, people, water, right? There's a fantastic book out there called Body's Many Cries for Water, and the premise of the book is how at the underlying core of disease is always a root of dehydration. So it's a very interesting topic. I'm not going to get huge into it because, I'm trying not to keep you for more than 30 minutes so I don't exhaust you, right? Everyone has their limit. And then we're going to talk about something else that was really interesting. Oh yeah, a little bit about batch baking and how to make things a little bit quick and easy. We're actually gonna spend time later on in the course really diving into this and figuring out for each family what's gonna be your best, it's kind of your best plan, and then your backup plan, and then your backup plan. But we're gonna get a little practice this week, or hopefully you did last week, I guess. I'm a week behind in my brain, on doing a little bit of batch baking. So making a big breakfast that can last 3 or 4 days, hopefully, unless your family is giant like mine, and then it lasts 1 to 2 hopefully. The same with making up a cold salad and doing a little bit of lunch prep, and then having some food in the freezer for whether that's for crock pot meals or kind of grab and go items. And we'll talk more about building up these grab and go and quick and easy out to eat options, things like that in the future. But we're just kind of getting our feet wet with that. So hopefully we'll see how that went for you guys in the comments and the group discussion as well. All right. So first things first, carbohydrates. We're on our second macronutrient, right? The first one we went through was fats, one of my favorite topics. I say that about almost everything, so just keep the caveat. It's my favorite. This is my favorite too. It's like squirrel. I love all the things. That's why I picked this career. So when we talk about carbohydrates, it's the big, kind of neon flashing sign in people's brains when they think about weight loss or what they're craving, right? Or in our heads, what's bad for us, right? Oh, carbs. There's so many carbs in that. Oh, I can't eat carbs. Or, the cravings for those carbohydrate foods are really strong and for a lot of people, and we'll talk about why in a minute. What we're looking for in shifting and changing the carbohydrate intake that we're currently experiencing is multifaceted. Ooh, that was a good word. the first form we're looking for is we want to move towards more complex carbohydrates, right? We want carbs that are coming with other things. They're not just the carb. They're not just going to give us quick energy, right? Turn right into glucose, and then they're just gonna be like these energy producers for this short-lived, period of time. Our bodies need carbs, right? We need carbs as that quick energy, but we want those carbohydrates to come with other things, especially fiber. We want them to come with minerals. We want them to come with fiber, which I just said, so now I've said it twice, but it's very important, so it was worth saying twice. We want them to come with other micronutrients, vitamins and minerals, right? And so shifting and getting away from simple carbohydrates is the big goal here. And we do that by moving towards whole grains, right? So I gave you a little infographic before, but I'll talk about it here for a sec because, why would I not? When we talk about refined grains versus whole grains, so refined grains have been stripped down into their most simple form, right? It makes them quick to cook. It makes their shelf life very long because there's almost nothing that can go rotten, right? When we've kind of just removed all the excess, extra things. And we've just gotten down to the really simple starchy carb part of it. And a lot of them have then been fortified because all those minerals and things that we took out and vitamins we're going to add back in. So it looks like we've got, folate, which is usually synthetic folic acid, which is a no-go, right? This is a sidebar, but I'll say this now because I wanted to say it sometime in the course. Folic acid is synthetic. For about 70% of the population, it blocks the folate receptor. Folate is the active form of that B vitamin, or the natural form. And folic acid will sit in this little receptor here and stop the body from being able to absorb folate. But folic acid is actually not going to turn into the methylated version of the folate that our bodies actually need. So folic acid can actually be very harmful for a lot of people. It's steadily being removed from things. But do keep that in mind, especially for my pregnant mamas. We need folate, right? And people will say, or your pediatrician or your OBGYN is going to say, you need a multi with folic acid in it. What you really need is folate. Folic acid is the synthetic version of folate. So there's lots of foods that are high in folate, the green leafy vegetables, things like that. But when you're looking for multivitamins or you're looking at foods that have been fortified, please, please, please try to avoid folic acid at all costs. And it's going to come out big time in the next few years. It's just taking the mainstream a hot minute to get all of that information to the front line. So that's a little that's a hot tip for y'all because it's not something everyone knows. So if you look it up, you can look up Dr. Ben Lynch or other people who have done quite a bit of research on this topic, and the information is there. So sidebar, folate, not folic acid, please and thank you. But so grains have been stripped down, right, to their simplest version, or foods, and then they've been fortified. The bioavailability of that fortification is not fantastic, and it's not the way that our bodies were designed to absorb and break down those nutrients, because they've kind of been manufactured, right? They've been made up. And so avoiding those and moving towards more complex carbohydrates that are in their truer form is going to be more beneficial. The same goes for getting our carbs from vegetables, even starchy vegetables, right? If we look at sweet potatoes or even potatoes, people think potatoes are terrible. They're really not. I mean, we look at the difference between a potato and minute rice or something like that. I would rather you have the potato, especially potatoes that have different colored skins. So the purple potatoes and the red and yellow and white. I don't know. All the colors. Brown. I mean, next week we're going to be talking about phytonutrients and we'll be talking about colors, and I'll talk more about potatoes then. So there you go. We'll talk about potatoes next week. But we're moving towards more complex carbohydrates, right? I have like 5 things I want to say, so I'm going to not forget them on this topic. First one is we're looking for whole grains, right? So when a food has been stripped down and refined, for example, we'll use rice. White rice, right, has had the outer husk has been removed, and that has created it to have a longer shelf life. It's quicker to cook. It's easier to serve. It's fluffier. It's less dense. But we've lost now the fiber and the minerals that were in this little husk here. And so this is an easy shift to start making to whole grains, right? Quinoa is technically a seed, and so is like one of those perfect complex carbohydrates. And I think it's got all the essential amino acids in it too. Like it's one of those foods you can just live off of, just quinoa itself. So increasing those foods slowly into the diet and making a shift is really going to increase your nutrient density. And I'm going to say those 2 words probably together every week, at least once. So look forward to that. You can like make a drinking game out of it or something. Actually, don't do that. That was terrible advice. So sidebar again. So these carbohydrates, right, we're looking to shift. But when we do that, things get a little bit more complex, right, with the complexity of the carbohydrates. The plant has a natural defense mechanism, which is in the form of phytic acid and other things in whether it's the grain or the legume that is going to try to prevent our body from being able to break it down all the way. And our bodies just kind of can't get at it. A way to overcome that very easily and cheaply is to soak, right? Is to soak your rice, your grains, and your beans and legumes and all those fun things in water with a little bit of acid for 8 to 12 hours, depending on what it is. It's also going to shift the texture. It's going to make all of your legumes a lot quicker to cook, which is lovely, as well as your grains. And it's going to make them a little fluffier and more enjoyable. When we get towards the end of the course, we're going to be talking about nutrient-dense stocks and broths that you guys can create really cheaply and easily on your own. A great way to increase nutrient density is to cook those legumes and those grains in the broth without, some people hate soup. I don't understand it, but some people do. And so you can get a lot of those really great minerals and micronutrients into your foods just simply by cooking your grains and your legumes in those stocks and broths that, either you're purchasing or making at home. So that's a little note on that. When we talk about moving away from simple carbs, right, obviously sugars are a big one. I don't mean sugars from berries and fruit. When we're eating whole fruits and that are in season in normal quantity, so 2 to 3 servings of fruit a day, assuming you don't have any type of insulin regulation problems, is completely reasonable. And very healthful, because when you have the whole fruit, right, you're getting fiber and you're getting all of these great things with it. Fruit juice, that's a no-go, right? You're not going to be getting things from fruit juice. Even juicing in general is not my favorite because it's removing so many of the components, the fiber, the pulp, right? That's where a lot of the counteracting happens with the sugars. And that's what I want to talk about next, which is glycemic load versus glycemic index, which is really important for maintaining our sugar balance and insulin regulation, making sure we have a really robust insulin response that's healthy, right? And that's going to prevent like hypoglycemia and diabetes, type 2 diabetes, and all of these concerns that seem to be really increasing in our world currently, in this developed world where we are getting a lot of things really stripped down, right? Quick energy, high caffeine, your 5-hour energy, whatever else. And so keeping an eye on glycemic load versus glycemic index is more accurate. So glycemic index is going to be just the sugar, right? The sugar carb component, like what is the response of the body? I think waffles, last time I checked, was like the highest glycemic index food. But then we look at glycemic load, and this is more accurate to what the body should be, assuming digestion is on point, should be doing with those foods. And glycemic load is going to take into account the fiber as well. So if we're having, potato flour from like a gluten-free flour mix or something like that, it's going to have a different glycemic load impact than actually having a potato with some chili and some veggies on top or something like that, right? So now we're trying to get more whole forms and more complex carbohydrates in a way that is reducing our glycemic load, like the overall burden of this glycemic shift. And I can give you more resources on that. This is not a course on, balancing blood sugar or diabetes or anything like that. So we're not going to go big into depth on that, but that's the shift, right? We're looking to get foods that are lower glycemic load and focus on increasing fiber, minerals, micronutrients, all of those fun things. And minerals are in the micronutrient group, but I just like to say 3 or 4 things. It sounds fancier. So there you go. So we've talked about whole grains. We've talked about complex carbs, glycemic load versus glycemic index, right? And then let's talk a little bit about digestion. So I would say about 70% of my clients have been either diagnosed by a physician or themselves as having some form of irritable bowel syndrome, right? Cranky guts is basically what irritable bowel syndrome is. You can have it with constipation, you can have it with diarrhea, you can just have it that's gas and bloating. And a lot of people are shifting and going towards a FODMAP style diet. And FODMAPs each letter stands for a thing. It's like fructo oligo disaccharide mono something polysaccharide. They are short chain carbohydrates. And these carbohydrates are usually poorly broken down and absorbed by our gut, which means they can, especially for higher at-risk population, cause some fermentation, gas, and bloating, right? Because if things aren't moving through, they're going to start fermenting, just like we'll talk about in the microbiome course. Like you can ferment things on the counter and make it grow bacteria. That kind of happens with these FODMAP foods. So a lot of people are removing FODMAPs or following a specific carbohydrate diet, those carbohydrates that are less likely to cause gas and bloating. And if you're interested, I can give you some food lists that represent that. If you have yourselves or family members that are struggling with IBS symptoms, that can be therapeutic for a period of time. The problem is, if you're just removing FODMAPs or you're altering the type of carbohydrates that you are ingesting, like with an SCD or specific carbohydrate diet, you're not really being aggressive about fixing the problem. Why is the body having such a dramatic response to those carbohydrates, to those FODMAPs, FODMAP foods? Is it bacterial? Is it nutrient deficiencies? And we're going to talk about zinc here in a minute. Is it barrier function problems? Is it a lack of digestive enzymes, right? We talked last week and we'll continue to talk about the type of our gut is supposed to have this balance. It's supposed to have enzymes that break down our foods. On the top end, bile salts and all these great things, high level of stomach acid, right? Often low stomach acid, even though it manifests as high stomach acid. For a lot of people will have heartburn symptoms and things like that. It's very often triggered by low stomach acid. I can give you a whole lecture on that separately if you're interested. Will actually decrease the body's ability to get those carbohydrates broken down by the time they're supposed to be in smaller forms when they make it to the gut, and then we cause this reaction because our gut is already not, we've outsourced a lot of these jobs to the microbiome of breaking down those carbohydrates, And if they're not small enough forms when they get down, they kind of ferment and they get angry. And if we don't have the type of bacteria that our gut needs to break them down, and support the digestive process, then we're really in trouble. So, that's just a little note on digestion and carbohydrates, as well as IBS, FODMAPs, SCD type diets, which can be therapeutic, but like I said, I'm the gut health girl, right? And I really don't see those being long-term solutions to dealing with IBS, because we want to fix the problem, not just put a Band-Aid on the symptoms. So we can go more into depth with that if you guys are interested. When we talk about hydration, this is a biggie. So I'm going to lead by example here. I've been recommending to clients recently these little, they're like little bands that go on your water bottle or your jug like this, and it'll flash you can set the timer for whatever the time frame you want is, and it'll flash to remind you to have a drink, and then the motion of tipping it and putting it back down resets the timer, and so it'll flash again, which is kind of hilarious, and I think it's great. One of them's a little cactus, don't be a cactus or something. Hydration, huge key to health. Proper balance of electrolytes and hydration is going to really change how you feel, and how efficient your body is at doing its jobs, at supporting the mitochondria. We can start this process of healing from the inside out by adequately hydrating. That means water, and clean water in particular. Trying to avoid plastics as much as possible. Making sure you have good sourcing, checking your water quality. Look and see if your water has, if it's got fluoride in it, what kind of treatment does it go through. If you've got an RO system, like a reverse osmosis or something like that, looking at remineralizing your water, because we're going to talk about mineral deficiencies, which are actually decently high in our population, which shouldn't be, right? Because we have plenty of food, but why do we have all of these deficiencies? And one of them is largely to do with both preparation and sourcing of our food and the mineral content of the soil, right? So, quick note on student athletes. I've had a lot of questions this last week from people in the family course on sports drinks and things like that. I'm sorry to tell you, but the first 5 ingredients in Gatorade is sugar. Different forms of sugar, but sugars, right? And this is the week of carbs. So let's stop drinking our carbohydrates. That's a very simple carbohydrate, right? That's the simplest form. Nothing else fantastically good is coming in with that. So emphasizing drinking water as opposed to any kind of sugary beverage, and then not going for sugar-free or for diet anything. Stevia in a liquid form is going to be your best bet at a sugar-free type of sweetener that doesn't completely destroy the microbiome and really damage your metabolism. We don't have time in this course to really get deep into the nuances of the sugar-free epidemic, but just like the fat-free epidemic, it is not healthful. The fake sugars, right, that are trying to create flavor but reduce calories can be very detrimental and harmful to your body. They can change your metabolism. They can change the way that your body perceives hungry and full, so that you actually overeat when you do get exposed to foods that have actual calories in them. They can dramatically affect your microbiome, which is going to affect everything from your antioxidant status to your serotonin and hormone happiness. Massive impact. So sugar-free is a no-go. I'd rather you use natural sugars like maple. All right, I'll give you guys some good examples here, right? This is something I should have mentioned this week. So natural sweeteners are going to be more healthful than the processed sugars, right? Like white sugar, obviously, or corn syrup is the big daddy to avoid. High fructose corn syrup skips the rate limiting step in the glycolytic pathway, which means we don't get that sensation of our body telling us, oh yeah, enough, stop. And so we can just keep this thing churning, and it's very destructive on our metabolism as well as our calorie balance. Like our body is always seeking for this homeostatic, yeah, those are words, balance. And with high fructose corn syrup, we are really, fructose in like, that form, this processed form, really just hijacking that normal balance that our bodies are trying to achieve. And there's going to be, if there's not already, there's going to be a lot of lawsuits on this in the future. So natural sweeteners as opposed to sugar-free are going to be a much more healthful decision. So I'll give you some ideas on how to do those, and the big ones to avoid. There's a lot of them. So we'll talk about it. Not in this video though. Okay, so I want to talk a tiny bit more. They've gotten really deep into digestion, but carbs is a huge category. It's like almost impossible to talk about in 1 week's time in a 30-minute video, but I'm going to make it. I have 4 minutes left or something ridiculous. So one other thing I want to mention about carbohydrates and the bacteria in the microbiome, which I'll talk more about this later on, is that carb addiction is a very real thing. It doesn't just have to do with psychological or emotional states, but it can be multifaceted. So, that's the second time I use that word. Such a good word. So, we have bacteria in our gut that can actually alter our chemistry and make us crave high carbohydrate foods by holding our hormones hostage. That was a good one. Holding our hormones hostage. So I don't want you to think that willpower is the only way to overcome whether you're addicted to cheese or carbohydrates or hot bread out of the oven with butter is your crack, right? There are ways to go about this, or sugar, even just those simple sugars. And so we're gonna slowly move that positive direction, but I don't want you to feel like you have to quit cold turkey. It's like anything, there is going to be a shift, and it's not always easy, especially if you feel like you're truly addicted to carbs or your kids are. And so I'll be giving ideas talking about the simple meals. I have seen plenty of kids that are truly addicted to carbs, and they act like different human beings when you give them high carb, simple sugar foods. Usually better for a period of time, right? It's almost calming, and then it goes crazy train, right? And so we're gonna just try to gently push out those high simple carb foods, high sugar simple carb foods. But you're not alone in this process, because there's a true addiction often to those simple carbs, whether it's the McDonald's foods or the just breads and crackers and cheese and snacky foods. Man, kids and adults love their snacky foods. So as we go through this process, give yourself grace, but also understand that there's a lot happening physiologically and emotionally, and these two things are tied together. So we're gonna work on some mindful behaviors too, to try to really understand who is hungry in there. Is it emotions that are needing to be fed, so that we can get a boost of endorphins and serotonin and things like that. So don't just think that, okay, this is totally in my head that I'm addicted to carbs or whatever else. And if you struggle from the hangries, right, which is a very real thing, right? If you or your kids struggle with feeling that hangry response, like, oh, I need to eat something, and we lean towards simple carbs because it's going to be the quickest, glucose. That's going to be the quickest energy source for us, and try to achieve that balance. Make sure that we're also pushing in some fats and some fiber in there, and that's that complexity that we're looking for. So don't stress out. We're going to do this together, and I'm here for you. So if you have questions or concerns, comment and engage if you need help with this process. Something else, a great way to do this is to be, one of your action steps was to add in like lentils, legumes, beans, all those fun things, whole grains, which can be tricky because if you're not used to cooking with those, it can seem a little overwhelming. I made a lentil, I don't know, I called it a stew. I don't know if it's a stew or not. It had 7 ingredients. I chucked them all in the crock pot. Came home, let the kids add some sour cream. Ooh, I know, it's exciting. And eat them with some organic corn chips, and they thought it was great. But they wouldn't always have thought that, right? So we're going to kind of ease into picky eating here. Try and try again. My sister and I have created an amazing resource with tons of tips and tricks to overcome picky eating. There are a lot of options out there. You do have to be consistent and you have to be diligent. That is one of the trickiest parts of getting through this transition is consistency, because we get tired. We don't want to do it anymore. Like, we've stood up to our kids or had that line of division of responsibility, which hopefully you read through that, and really kind of set our boundaries for our family and what our goals are and in respect to that responsibility separation. But we get wore down. So that's part of what this group is for, is to both commiserate and to share wins. So please feel free to engage whatever level you feel comfortable with. But there's something about having both that accountability as well as having that camaraderie of just commiseration, right? Oh my gosh, I just can't even. So lentils and things like that are potentially things you haven't been experiencing a lot as a family. Start with tiny tastes. Start with having it as the side dish if you want. Or just say, take it or leave it. This is something that we're doing. We are not going to have lentils every night this week. You're not going to starve. And if you have 3 bites and you really hate it, okay. Yeah, I'll accept that, and or whether it's the texture or things like that. But just be consistent about exposing. Don't say one time we made lentils and, well, now we're going to quit because I didn't like them, they didn't like them, and I'm not going to do it anymore. Let's try different seasonings. Let's try different time of year. Let's try different toppings, different formats. Let's make tacos out of those lentils. There are some great lentil taco recipes out there. It's kind of like it ends up being like a bean burrito kind of texture, but you use taco seasoning. Anyways, tacos all the thing. And so looking at zinc right now, because we're talking about taste perception, texture, those kind of things, zinc is a great segue. Zinc deficiency is a biggie. I see it a lot with people that have imbalanced microbiome, right, with these IBS kind of symptoms. I see it very frequently with my picky eaters. You can do a zinc taste test at home with some aqueous zinc, liquid zinc, and you swish it around in your mouth and you calculate the time that you taste it. It's up there in the scientific okayness, but it's borderline as far as if you had no other concerns or symptoms or things like that. It can be skewed by the things that you've previously eaten, or if you had a supplement that had zinc in it recently or things like that. But in general, the amount of time it takes you to taste a very strong mineral taste in your mouth is going to indicate your deficiency levels. Looking for things like spots on the nails. All of these things are more ethereal, hard scientific, you have this spot, it equals this diagnosis. But if we can kind of put a lot of things together, we can assume zinc deficiency. They make zinc lozenges with elderberry because zinc enhances the immune system. And so having kids that are immunocompromised, or if you look at really picky eating, going gray really early. Anybody? Yes? No? There's lots of things. Oh, loss of taste for meat. Like, just can't even stand the taste of meat or things like that, or red meat, because the body is kind of trying to tell you, well, I can't break this down because I don't have zinc. And so increasing zinc foods is a fantastic way to go about starting that, as well as supplementing with either whether it's a mineral chew for little kids, and I can send you guys recommendation for that, or increasing zinc with whether it's lozenges, foods we already talked about. But be aware of these kind of underlying imbalances, because we're going to work on the social emotional aspects, right, of division of responsibility, addressing the picky eating, but we don't want to just throw out the notion that there could not be something else underlying that's causing some of these. When we get to microbiome, we're going to talk a lot about how the gut bugs, or bugs in general, those on our skin and in our body, can really alter taste perceptions and cravings, and everything from absorption to digestion, all of those things. So don't give up, or don't think your kids are just crazy stubborn if they're not going for it at the first few tries. We're going to keep pushing and keep going through this process together. But do it in a way that doesn't also make you feel like a crazy person. So take it step by step. I'm here for you. The group is here for you, especially if you've got extreme picky eating to the point where there's severe calorie restriction. Then we need to get deeper, right, for sure. But if we're just dealing with attitude, that's what I'm here for. I'll whip you into shape. So, the other and last thing to talk about was batch baking. So hopefully getting some of those, breakfast, lunch, and dinner things going, trying to get things built up so that when you have a free day, you're able to prep ahead a little bit, has been successful for you. I'd love to hear whether it was or wasn't, or things that worked or didn't work, or what kind of resources you like in that department, because I have a million. Girl, I am the queen of either the 15-minute dinner, like if it can be made in 15 minutes, sold, or having things prepped ahead of time with not a lot of forethought, honestly, because I'm not a huge planner. I know people out there that are. So we're actually going to be creating a meal plan for you guys that takes all of the recipes from the course, and especially ones that we've done videos for, and there'll be more videos added basically constantly. Every time I run the course, I add more videos like these. But it's going to take all of those recipes and then turn them into a meal plan with a shopping list and portion sizes and all those things. So right now we're working through big steps, right? Big kind of action steps. And then we're going to fine tune things as we get going. So you can go at your pace, what works for you, whether that's quick or slow or super duper slow, and doing one action step a week, whatever is going to keep you moving forward, keep you on this positive trajectory, because life is going to happen. Things are going to get big. There's going to be a vacation. There's going to be, a wedding or a celebration of some kind, or the pipes are going to break, or the oven's not going to work. Something is going to happen. But if you can keep making consistent forward progress, then those life things just add to your ability to be creative. I think necessity is the mother of invention, right? And so we figure it out as we go, and we don't let those things cause us to slide back into habits that we worked hard to get out of. We let them help us be creative about eating out, for health and wellness, which you can do. It's possible. You don't have to go through the drive-thru. There are other options. Even healthy food has drive-thru these days. I love it. Can I just tell you, the white meat teriyaki chicken with the brown rice and the extra steamed vegetables has a drive-thru. They have a drive-thru. It's amazing. So that's kind of it for this week. It was a lot to go over. We talked about Complex carbs, we talked about digestion of those FODMAPs. Oh, here's a tip for you. Chew. I know you've heard this before and it's annoying, but if you chew your food, you really chew it. Like the more that you chew it, the more digestion potential your body has, which is going to reduce gas and bloating. It's going to increase how quickly you feel full, and it's going to help you taste your food and start becoming more of a mindful eater. Have you ever gotten to the end of something delicious and been like, I didn't even enjoy that, I just ingested it? The same is for kids. So getting out, we're going to talk more about this later, but getting out of the living room and in front of the TV and sitting at the table and sitting where you're seeing other people and food, not something else, because we're going to eat more and we're going to taste less if we are focused on something else and not focused on food and relationships. So we're looking for balance. We're trying to make some bigger meals. We're working on increasing more complex carbohydrates. Let me know how that goes. And then I'm going to add a little addendum here. It's the first of many. Well, it's like the 17th of many. About some natural sweeteners and understanding how sugar-free is not our friend, pretty much with anything, unless it's naturally sugar-free, which there's not, meat. There's not a lot of things that have no sugars whatsoever in them. They do exist, but they're also kind of boring sometimes because we need carbs, we need glucose. It's okay. It's okay to have it. So next week we're going to be talking about fat. We're going to switch it up a little bit because we've talked about picky eating, so it's kind of a good time to segue into and take those skills from last week into fruits and vegetables, getting our colors. So we're going to take a break from macronutrients for a minute. We'll get back to it and do proteins the week after next. So don't worry, we're getting there. Proteins is usually one of the easiest ones for people to make some switches. And that's when we really have some aha moments when we start talking about amino acids and things like that. But next week is phytonutrients. So talking about colors and eating the rainbow. We'll give you some really cool checklists for the kids, and it's going to be awesome. We're also going to be talking about eating in season, right? And looking for where our food is coming from. This was another good, introduction because we were talking about the soil and mineral density and what was our food grown in and where did it come from, as well as what are we putting on ourselves. So we're going to give you some resources on that as well. And then we're going to talk about organic versus non and where should you spend your money, because it gets expensive. Sticker shock is a big thing when you start trying to shift your eating. And eventually, this is going to be a much cheaper way. I promise you, it is going to be less expensive to eat for your health, especially when you consider the healthcare cost at the other end of dealing with the health problems that have come out of eating poorly. What is worth spending your money on, and how can we get around, not having a $900 Costco trip every 2 weeks, and also decreasing waste and throwing things away and all, because you bought 700 pounds of lettuce and nobody ate the lettuce. So we'll talk about those things as well. Then we'll talk about some multivitamins, and we're going to go deeper more into the most common nutrient deficiencies. We really just talked about zinc this week because of the correlation with picky eating, but there's a list of the big 4 or 5 that I see really commonly, and so I'm going to give you the tools and education to try to assess those in your own families, and then some really fantastic and easy ways to overcome them. Spoiler alert, it may or may not be with smoothies, so if you don't have one, you should be asking for an epic blender for your birthday or Christmas, or you can just buy your own self one. So that's it for this week. If you have questions, I really would love to hear them. This course is not just a one-way exit, right, of information, and there's so much more I could be teaching, but I'm really trying to pick the highlights for you and make it in a way that's digestible, and you didn't want to go back to grad school, that's why you're taking this course. So I'm going to try not to teach it like it was grad school. But I really do want to know what you're interested in. If it's sports nutrition, if it's, student athletes, that's the same thing, sports nutrition. If it's understanding more about type 2 diabetes or conditions that you're experiencing, or digestion or gut health or whatever, let me know. I'm here for you.